And so many people have this topic in distortion. So, discipline. Like, what are the first thoughts that come to your head when you hear the word discipline? I'm curious. Put it in the chat if you want to. Discipline, oftentimes our ego will think discipline is like hard or like struggle or suffer, or, you know, there's all of these like words that are wrapped around the idea of discipline. And so there's two different types of discipline. There's like the ego's discipline, and then there's like the devotional discipline. I think of the root word disciple. Oh, I like that. Yeah, devotion. Okay, we're all on the same page. And so I like that, disciple. Devotion and discipline and disciple. Discipline is one of the things that we need on the spiritual path, because the truth is that it's very easy to the nature of reality is that it's falling apart, right? Like the nature of being a human is like eventually we fall apart. And so we need practices, and we need devotional daily practices that we can have so that we can keep it together, right? So that when we get sick, we get over it quickly. When we get old, like we can still walk, we can still enjoy our lives, we can still do all the things that we want to do. And so this is where devotion or discipline is like forming a new habit. And so the ego's version of discipline is like, I'm going to do it no matter what. I'm like going to like go to this job every single day, even if I don't like it, like, because I'm going to achieve it. Or, you know, like I'm going to run that marathon no matter what. And your body's like struggling, right? There's like a type of discipline of the ego that is very detrimental to the body, that is more in the frequency of like fear or self-hatred or like self-abandonment, where you're not actually listening to the true needs of the body. And then there's the devotional discipline that is picking out something for yourself that you're going to do every single day that is so good for yourself, that's going to serve the future versions of yourself. And so when we play with this idea of discipline or devotional discipline, it is really to like sift through all of the information of the world and find practices like wellness practices, spiritual practices that we at first are making the effort to show up to every day. So I remember when I first started doing yoga, I was out of university and I had an accounting job. And so there was like a 4-month break I had. So I moved to Vancouver and I was like, I'm just getting out of everything in my city right now. And I just like want to be by myself and like find out who I truly am. So I lived there, and that's when I stumbled upon yoga, and I like went into my first vegan restaurant, and I was like, it was like a whole new world opened up for me. But when I started doing yoga, like everything changed in my body. Like it felt so good, but I was always having to like go to the yoga studio because I didn't know how to practice yoga at home. So I'd always go to the studio and, you know, do the yoga, and I felt so good after, and it was just like revolutionizing my life. So I went back to my city where I was born, Edmonton, and I had my corporate job at the accounting firm. And yoga was like the one thing that made me feel good. And I hated this job so much. So I would wake up every day at like 6 a.m. and I was like, forcing myself to learn how to do yoga at home because I didn't have the time to actually get to the studio. And so it is the urgency or like the desire inside of me that knew that I had to do something for myself because the other parts of my life were like not that great. And I had to train myself to do it, to like learn how to do it, like look into the books, like watch the videos, like how am I going to do some of this stuff at home so I don't miss it? And it was that discipline that cultivated within me, like a practice in the mornings that I still, to this day, 14 years later, wake up to every single day. And so it doesn't come through like, oh, I'm going to do this and it's going to be amazing, right? It comes through, okay, I have to learn a new skill. I'm going to wake up early, or I'm going to do it at night, or I'm going to make the time to learn this new skill so I can get proficient in this skill so that it becomes easy for me to show up to it every day. And so at first, when we're approaching this devotional discipline practice, we really have to ask ourselves, like, what is it that I actually really love? So maybe for some people, it's walking in the forest. Maybe it's running. Maybe it's going to your favorite park. Maybe it's sitting and meditating. Maybe it's breath work. Like I have so many free practices in the free practice section of my app. And also, if you go on YouTube, I'm like uploading so much yoga stuff on there to my YouTube channel. I'll link it in the replay. But like there's so many tools that you have. Like you don't even have to learn how to do it yourself. Like you can follow along to a video like on my YouTube channel, or you know, the one that's in the free practices, or like do the breathwork practice in the free practices. Like if you like to like go and maybe sit and like have your drink in the mornings by yourself under a tree and just be with yourself, right? But the trick is like you want to learn practices that are going to support your health and your well-being. And so that's why I really like yoga. It's like so multifunctional. Like it's not just stretching your body. You're like getting stronger. You're getting more aligned. You're getting to check in with yourself every day and how you actually feel. And this is where you can test your energy levels. This is where you can test your emotional capacity. This is where you can like start to test like all these multidimensional aspects of yourself. Because when we wake up in the mornings, we start rushing through our day and we haven't even checked in with ourselves. Like we have no ability to like be there for others because we haven't even been there for ourselves. And so what I really like about creating this devotional discipline practice is that, and many of you probably already have one, right? Is that you've carved out the time. And if you haven't already, you carve out the time in the times when you say, I have no time, right? So you wake up earlier and the sacrifice is that you're losing sleep. But when you do it, you get more energy. You've checked in with yourself. You know how you feel. Your day is completely different, right? You're more focused. You're more able to like meet the opportunities of life, meet the obstacles of life with grace and with ease. And so all of a sudden, this whole time dimension of reality starts shifting. And since you've, given yourself the time, now you have all of this beautiful energy to create more time in the places where you actually want to spend your time. And so when we can develop these practices, these devotional discipline practices, like this is one of the greatest gifts that we can give ourselves, because every day we get to meet ourselves in a specific place at a specific time. And it can change and be different, like yoga, breath work, like whatever it is for you, going out for a walk, going for a run, like you can do these different practices. But what matters is that for that first bit of the day, which I think is the most important part of the day to do it in, because the thing is like when you go about your day, you're gonna get to the end of your day, you're gonna eat your dinner and you'll be like, oh, I just don't feel good. I'm not going to do it today. I'm going to like sit and, I don't know, watch TV. I don't think any of you do. But if you do, it's like we'll make excuses. We'll scroll on Instagram. We'll find the excuses, go watch YouTube stuff. And so when we do it at the beginning of the day, it's done, right? We did it. And so we woke up earlier. We didn't take any time out of our day. We woke up earlier. We feel better. And our whole day is different now. And so when you come to the energy of like the first thing that I'm going to do today is something for myself that's going to make me feel good, that's going to promote my long-term health, right? These are like the longevity practices that are going to allow me to become a better person, that are going to be more self-awareness practices. Like, how do I feel? How are my thoughts? What's my mind today? Am I holding anything in my body? Am I angry at anyone? Like, is there anything that I can clear from my body that doesn't need to be here right now? Emotions that like I can just move through and like don't need to come into my day with me. Like, you get to ask yourself all of these questions when you're sitting in like this sacred circle with yourself. And so when you can do and show up and like make the commitment to these practices, this is where like discipline becomes a really beautiful aspect of yourself, because it doesn't matter the circumstances of your life. Like, if life starts knocking you over, you have this to turn to, because you've already created like the muscle memory or the skill or the proficiency in your body, so that when you come to it, it's not like life is so hard and you're having to learn a new skill at the same time. Right. And so that's why the longevity practices are preventative practices. They're so that you know how to help yourself before it all falls apart. Right. And there's nothing wrong with it all falling apart and having to learn something new. But the idea is, right, like the more we can learn, the more we can support our health, the more we can feel good in our bodies when we do get sick, when life is really hitting us, like lifing us, when life is like doing the life thing, like we're like, oh, it's okay. Like, I can turn to this and I can come into myself more deeply and I can feel more of myself and I can see what I actually need in this moment. And it might not be what the culture expects of you. Maybe you don't want to go to work, right? Maybe you don't want to be in that relationship. Maybe you don't want to be eating that food anymore because you're just done with it because it's not making you feel well. And so it's by checking in with yourself and doing something good for your body that we cultivate these disciplined practices that allow us to become, again, more of who we came here to be. And that's where so much ease in this path opens up, because when our discipline practices is from the ego and we're like forcing ourselves to do something we just don't want to do, it's not that you need to stop doing that thing, right? If it's like a job and it's paying your rent and it's like, you like don't have anything else, like that's okay. Like, don't drop the job yet, but it's showing you the deeper layers of like, why am I still here? Why haven't I tried to look for something different? What parts of me do I not trust to like take the next step? How can I implement new work so that I can leave this thing that's misaligned? And so for so many people, we will just like continue on with the thing that's creating us misery because we feel safe with it, because we know what to expect with it. And so the discipline practice, the devotional discipline practice, is a place that it's almost like a bed for ourselves, right? Like, we know that it's there all the time for us. We know that we can always turn to it. We know that we always have it. We know that nobody can take it away. It is given to ourselves by ourselves. And it becomes like this well that we're filling up. And rather than thinking we're like forcing ourselves to do it because we don't like ourselves, or we're like miserable in the situation, or like, I'm just going to do it no matter what. I'm going to prove everyone wrong. I'm going to achieve this. I'm going to achieve that, right? Like this really like, wounded masculine energy of like just doing it no matter what, no matter what anyone says. It's a really soft energy of like, I'm so grateful and gracious that I can develop the skills to give myself this one thing. And so when you can learn this, whatever it is for you by yourself, and like, I just like love talking about yoga because I just do it every morning. And then I do my breath work and I do my meditations, and then I go for a walk in the woods. Like I do it all, because I know how it makes me feel and I know how different my day is. And when I don't do it, I can see clearly like the difference in my day. And it's so something I will gladly invest my time in. And so we do this with a lot of things. Like I'm sure you could pick out parts in your life where you're like, oh, I've already created like a discipline practice around this. And so it could be in like communicating with others. Like, some people communicate very violently, and maybe you've like refined your communication where you're speaking in like a very kind, compassionate way, even when people aren't being kind and compassionate. And so there's many ways where we've like developed proficiency in specific areas of our life. It could be with food, right? You like, I don't know about you, but like my parents didn't feed me beautiful organic food all the time. Like sometimes it's like Michelinas and like I don't even, my hamburger helper stuff, like just stuff like I couldn't even imagine eating today. But I had to realize that this food was not food, and I had to learn how to cook. And I had to like learn what vegetables went good with what. And I like followed recipes, and I was like figuring out like what I actually liked and what my body really liked. And now when I open up my fridge, I like can make magic out of anything that's in there, because I know so well like how to cook, what to eat, like what makes me feel good, what doesn't make me feel good, how to trust my intuition when I'm eating. Like eat the same foods that might feel good today might not feel good tomorrow. And so it was a discipline for me to like learn how to eat properly, so that now I can just like quickly whip together food and I don't even have to think about it. And so in your life, you have places where you've become proficient. And so you get to look at like these areas of like, what did I do to develop the discipline so that I could learn the skill, so we could become proficient in the skill, so I could get something out of the skill, right? And this is where the first nature and the second nature and the third nature come in of the human. Our first nature is like very primal, like cries and it cries and it cries and it doesn't get what it wants, right? Like a child. And then the second nature is very like learned. Like it's like when you're learning how to read and you're learning how to write, right? You're like trying to write the words, and it's like the sentence, then it's the paragraph, and then eventually like, you're writing the whole story. But third nature is when you read the story and you get insights, you get information, you get like all the downloads, and you're like getting something out of the story, whether it's feelings, whether it's emotions, whether it's information, whether it's like knowledge, right? And so third nature is when you transcend the skill building and you move into like the getting of the thing from it. And so it is through this constant repetition, right, which is the third universal constant. We went into polarity, right, center, circumference, up and down, in and out. We went into pattern, where all pattern is relied upon all of planet Earth and you, right? Like every tiny little piece is like a fractal of all of it. And then the third is repetition. The more you repeat something again and again and again, the more you're going to get something out of it. The more you see the seasons come and go again and again and again, the more in winter you're going to be like, oh, winter's great because spring comes, like I don't have to be scared because I know the sun's going to rise again. And so you develop this proficiency so that eventually you can be sitting in meditation, and instead of your thoughts being like, blah, 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 talking at you, and you're just like, wow, it's wild in here, right? You're sitting in meditation, you're having a conversation with God. And so that's the whole point of the discipline, right? Because the thing is like, if we are like going through life, and if you just look at anyone around you, like we disintegrate. We like don't take care of our bodies, and like it all falls apart, and we're sick, and we're just like not enjoying the end of our life. But if you can see that, you can do something about it, right? And so you have to do something about it the moment you see it, because if you don't, you're still living in the not ignorance anymore, but arrogance. Like I see it, but I'm not going to do anything about it. And this is where the obedience comes in. The obedience is like coming here to like revere, bow down to, or surrender to what you see, and then creating the action, right? Everything in nature creates the action that it needs, the right action, right? And that's why nature is so obedient. It's like, that's why a forest can grow without your involvement, because nature's obedient to like the inner soul of the like species, And so when you can move into this awareness of discipline, knowing that it's really going to serve you in the future, and see what's going to happen to you, right? And that's why we look at our parents and we get so triggered, but it's like, well, what are you doing to reverse that, And then you get to make the action. And so you get to wake up every day, even when it's hard, even when you're like, oh, I just want to sleep in, which like you can, but also when are you going to carve out the time for you? Right? So making sure that even if it's 5 minutes, you do a stretch or you do some meditation or you do a little bit of breath work. Even if you only have 10 minutes, like you know exactly what you're going to do so that when you get there, you're not like distracted and like, I'm not going to do this. Right? And that's where we find mentors on the path. That's where we find teachers on the path. Like, show me what you've learned, right? And we have teachers all around us. Like everyone here is a teacher. Everyone in my app is a teacher because everyone has mastered some part of themselves, right? Whatever it is. And so you get to look at those parts of yourself that you're like, oh, I like really spent a lot of time learning this. And now you just talk about it all day, right? That's the proficiency of the devotional discipline that you now have, that now you're using it like to get information to help other people out. And so that's what it's all about, right? Because it's all for the collective community. And so it's a good reminder, especially in summer, right? In summer, it's like we tend to fall out of our practices, right? It's like the sun's in the sky, it's warm, we want to go play, everyone's out, the community's bustling, we're always like looking to get out. And the sun's up earlier, right? So we're getting pulled out earlier. But still, again, can you create the time in the day, in the morning of the day, right? When it's easier to get stuff done, when there's more yang energy, when it's like the spring energy, the uprising energy, like that first masculine energy where you can really do it, right? Can you create that time at the beginning of the day so that you can really put in the time and the effort that you need to support your body and to support your health? Because we're nothing without our health, right? We can have all the money in the world and we don't have our health, we have nothing. Our health is everything because our health allows us to work. Our health allows us to be in our relationships. Our health allows us to be in our communities. Our health allows us to feel good inside of ourselves. And so if we don't feel good inside of ourselves, we are never going to be in a good relationship. We're not going to enjoy our job, right? And so it's always the factor's you. And so developing this discipline is like a sacred right. Like, what are you going to do that you just love so much, that you wish you had more time for? So for some people, it might be drawing, right? And so you're learning to weave in your desires. Like, what do you desire for yourself? And feeling those desires and allowing those desires to live inside of you and to create space in your life for them, right? And when we don't create space for the things we want to do, we just get more of what we don't want to do. But when we tell the universe, I'm worthy to receive what I desire, so I'm going to make the time and I'm going to act on what I desire, what I truly want in this moment, or what's going to make me feel good, right? Because there's a difference between like the pure desire and like the unwholesome desire, right? But like what my soul wants to do right now, can I invest that time? Can I invest that energy and show the universe that I'm worthy to receive what I want to do? And this is where the matrix starts shifting and changing, right? Because the moment you shift your behavioral patterns, you're changing your mind, right? And so the whole matrix will reconstruct around you. And so this is where it's really hard when we're in our everyday schedules, if you have one, everyday job, if you have one, like the monotony, which like we all fall into because it's easy and predictable and reliable, right? That's where we got to like kick ourselves in the butt and be like, okay, I'm not getting the results that I want. Something needs to change. And so the first thing you can change is your practice, right? The first thing you can change is to look at your day to day and be like, where am I wasting my time? Where do I not feel like I'm creating more time for myself, more time for the things that I love? Because if you're not doing that, you're never going to have more time. And time is the one constant that we all have. We all get 24 hours of time in the day. And so the trick is like, how are you going to use it to your advantage? And so what are the practices you're going to use that are going to make you feel good, make you feel like you have more energy, make you love yourself more? When you look in the mirror, you're like, oh yeah, I love me. I'm loving on me right now. Because then you're going to love on others. And so really reorganizing your time, right? Noticing if you're sleeping in too much. Notice if you're lounging around too much. And being honest with yourself. Because if you're not honest with yourself, nobody will be. And so when we move into the sacred discipline, the devotional discipline of our practice, it becomes a beautiful place that we actually wouldn't say no to when we put enough time in it, learning the skill, doing it. Because then you'll naturally begin to wake up for it. You'll naturally begin to wake up early here because it will naturally give you more energy, right? Your soul will naturally desire to be more invested in it because it's shifting your reality into one that you want to see. And so these tiny, simple shifts in our day-to-day will change our whole life. And also, there's a certain amount of like readiness you have to have for change because change is very disrupting, right? And so you know, when you're on the spiritual path, it's like, you can feel when big change is happening and everything starts shifting and it's like, oh, it's so uncomfortable. Like friends are lost, maybe jobs, relationships, you know, it's just like you're evolving and you're growing and your soul's wanting change and it's seeking for more. And like, that's okay. And you get to be okay with the changes that come in your life. And the moment we're not okay with it and we're resisting it is when the illness comes in. It's when we get sick. It's when we get knocked over. It's when, you know, the hardship starts to come in, because the universe is literally trying to stop us in our tracks and show us, like, I want you to see the time that you spend in your day. And how are you going to start to shift it and reorganize it so that you are feeding the deeper wells of your soul? And so there's many ways in which, obviously, you can have a relationship with discipline. But if it's something hard where you're like, oh, this practice is so hard, like I'm really struggling through it, how do I keep showing up for it? You know, it's all atmosphere. You know, like the atmosphere you create is the energy you create. So when I do my yoga, I really like to put on a candle, put on incense. It's the morning, you know. I like to wash my face, brush my teeth right in the morning, put oil on my face, put perfume on, my perfume I make it feel so good and beautiful and wonderful. And then when I'm there, it's like a ritual. I've like ritualized the whole scenario. So it's not just like, oh, get up, just put the clothes on, do the yoga. And it's like, you know, it's harder that way. But if you can really get yourself into it, into the feeling state of it. And like discipline is meant to be like a sensual act with yourself, right? And so what are those things that would make you feel so good? Maybe it's putting your diffuser on and having some scents going, like the things that you can alter your mind as well. So smelling specific oils will help you to, right, be more in your body, whether it's like lavender, frankincense is great for anxiety. Like, I mean, there's so many different ways that you get to like manipulate the situation, put good music on. Like, you know, even when the situation is harder, you're like cleaning your house, like how are you gonna make yourself love it? Like, what are you gonna put on? Are you gonna dance with the music and just like clean your house and just get over it? Or are you just be mad the whole time? And so your energy is everything. Your energy will be whether you keep doing it or you don't. Because so many people that implement these practices into their life, it's like 5. Okay, am I back? I don't know why this keeps happening. I'm even at Wi-Fi and everything. Um, yes, okay, good. Okay, so you're increasing the amount of time that you're spending there. And then all of a sudden, like 1 hour is nothing, but at first 1 hour is a lot. So you're easing yourself into new practices. And even if you already have practices, we're here to like learn new practices again and again and put them into place again and again and again. And so we're just like adding different layers to our tool belt, because eventually you'll see like there's little pieces of magic in everything. And then you can start to weave them together and you can create your own personal practices of like what your body actually wants. Your body can speak to you and you can start listening to what it needs. But first you have to learn the skill, right? You have to learn the skill before you can use the skill. And so whatever it is for you, you know, get into my YouTube channel and like watch the yoga videos I've been putting out, you know, get into the free practices in my app. If you want the yoga classes, my membership is great for that. I also have it as like a standalone buy for a lifetime. You can have it. But it's really like find someone that you love that has information that you want, and that might not be me, but you're here, so it might be. But like find people that you love that are like living the life you want to live, that are doing the things you want to do, and find out what their practices are. And that's what I had to do. I had to look at the people around me and be like my teacher, my yoga teacher, she was I think she was like 62 when I met her. I met her in New York, and I'd heard about her through the grapevine in Thailand. And I went to her class. I was going through New York from Africa to Nicaragua or something. And I was there for 3 days, and I went through the 3 days she was teaching, and I was like, oh my God, who is this woman? I love her so much. Like, she has such a great outlook. She bent her body everywhere. She's like 62. She's so sprightly, so awesome. Like, I've never seen a 62-year-old like this before. So of course, little like 23-year-old me was like, teach me everything. So I ended up spending time with her at her place, like weeks. And like, that's why I wrote the yoga book. She told me to, because she gave me all this information. And so when you find people that are living the life you want to live, right? She was like out in like the country, like with the chickens and like the whole scene, right? And I was like, how are you doing this? How do you live your life like this? How do you have this perspective? Like, you're so joyful. Like, I've never met anyone like you. And then you get their practices, you adopt their practices, you do their practices because they found something that works. And that doesn't mean that you have to be the thing, that they are, but you get to take those pieces that are working for them, for you. And then you get to find another person where you're like, I really like this aspect of you. Like, teach me everything. And you get to be a student. And so a great master is a great student, right? And that's the trick, is like, always be a student, always learn, always find people that you want to learn from, and know that your energy and your time is so precious. So where are you going to spend it? Who are you going to spend it with? We become the 6 people that we're around. And so when you know where to put your energy, when you know the field you want to circle in, you're going to naturally gravitate to and become that. And so that's like what this whole app is. It's like, we're here to build these communities like this. You're here to be that light for your community. So people are gravitated towards you. So they want to learn your practices. And so the more and more we peel back the layers of falsity and illusion and, the misperceptions and, the cultural conditioning and like how we think things need to be, the more and more we find our true essence, like, you will just magnetize in the people that are ready for you. And so learn the practices, learn different practices, learn from people that you're really inspired by, like, loop into their field, like, be with them and exchange energy with them, and it will transform your whole outlook on life. And it, when you're with that grumpy person and your day is just like, well, a little weird, and you're like feeling their energy. And it's like, we get to choose, we get to choose to not engage with people when they're grumpy. We get to call them out on it. Like, we get to stop holding back the things we want to say, as long as we're saying them with love and kindness, right? But if we're constantly holding back, then we're going to get sickness, throat issues, right? We're going to get like thyroid issues. And so we just learn, you learn more deeply who you are. And the more deeply you learn who you are, the more you cultivate a community around you that wants to know more who they are too, because they see that light in you. And so it's really beautiful. It's magnetic. It is like, but it's your practice. It's your discipline. It's like what you've cultivated, what you've cultured within yourself, what you've refined to such a degree where you're like, oh, I could do this forever. I'm like so excited you're here. I don't need to get anything from you. I just like get to overflow my gifts to you. And that's when you feel like I'm in the right practice right now, because my practice is pouring out love from me. And so my teacher would always say, like, after you do your yoga practice, if you're angry at everyone, you're doing the wrong practice. Like, after you do your work, if you're just like still swearing and have road rage and you're like still in the same place, like, there's different practices that you need to be doing. And so yes, stuff comes out, but like, it should come out and leave. And so we just learn, right? Through trial and error, through trying things on, finding out what works, throwing away what doesn't work, and not having any attachment to it. Like, if it's not working, it's not working. You don't have to hold on to it forever. It's like, it's not your burden to carry if you don't want it to be, but it also is your burden to carry if you won't let it go. And so we get to learn to become light on this path, right? We get to learn that like, we don't need so much stuff, right? We don't need like all the baggage, and we have to be the ones to say no, to release it, because it like uses gas, right? It uses our energy. And so more and more you return to yourself, less and less will you allow things that are sucking your energy to be there in your life, because you know what it feels like to feel good. And the moment you know what it feels like to feel good, nobody can take that away from you. And it is like the most beautiful drug that you'll seek out for the rest of your life. and it'll be apparent when you don't feel good. It'll be really loud and uncomfortable. And for most people, they just feel that all the time. And then it's not really that loud, and there's like no urgency for change. But when you can get yourself to a place where you're feeling really good, you can start to delineate the circumstances in your life that aren't aligned, and you get to be more true to who you are, which will only help your health, your wellness, all of it until the end of time. And then time never ends. So it's like, you might as well do it because you're going to be here forever. um, that's the soul's rebirth, right? Every time we go to sleep, we die, and we wake up and we're reborn. That's how we are in the human body. So I love you all. Thank you for being here. I hope that, I know that this will seep in and you will do your devotional practice, the things that you're putting off, the things where you're like, I just want to sleep in a little bit more. Like you'll hear my little voice in your head and it'll say, wake up, the sun's rising, go look at it. Go sit in front of it, like go do something for yourself. And don't feel guilty ever if you're doing something for yourself, right? It's the greatest act of love that you can do because your love is within. So I love you all so much. Thanks for being here, despite my call always stopping me in the middle for some reason. And I will see you next time, next week. I like to announce our upcoming theme on Sundays. So make sure, I think all of you are on my email list, but I'll always post it in the app too. So I'll see you next week.